Oh. Yeah. Me. I pick two person. Wait. What? Triple Q, double Q, what Q? Wait, best. I gotta buy that. What? I thought I have the. What? What the fuck? I'm so much better than you. And don't be toxic, man. My mama always tell me not to be like toxic. Shut the fuck up. I'm still playing at you. What? I saw an Ari? Oh. Okay,
I'm here to help.
See, I'm still better. Fuck off, man. Salosa approved that. Oh, so who is Salosa? I don't know. Someone rap, I guess. I think he's a creep, man. I think Salosa say I'm good rather than anyone else. He must be drinking, man. Ah. Tommy. Tell you something and you can believe him, you know, like true. It's really. Say that you suck. Oh, I mean, and he sucks more. You see. So week 4 is loot box, I guess. What loot box? What, really? So you want to get loot box? Because week 5 you don't know what week 5 they will do. Maybe week 5 they will say, hey, get handsome skin. 6. Or it will go week 5 week 6, man. Okay, I finished Outlast. You see? Yeah, I just finished it. See? Me too, man.
I started at 16 in my town in the suburbs of a big city. At first, they put me to help the chef in the kitchen and clean the place and stuff. 2 months later, my boss told me that on the days off of the main delivery boy, I would deliver, and I said yes, of course. Then all of a sudden, the delivery boy quit when he came from delivering a pizza at this one house.
Okay, man.
He looked traumatized and shaken, like something with his face and his eyes. He went into my boss's office and they argued for about 15 minutes. Then he came out and said, "Good luck, kid." Then told me he had quit.
What? We have level
I asked
64
why, and
player?
he said, "Just a shitty job, that's all." He then patted me on the back and left. I knew it was something else than just a shitty job, but I didn't think much of it. That was the last time I saw him. So for the next couple of weeks, boy, till they could find someone that can deliver. PS and went over. Watching the sunset while driving over there, I was hoping it'd take 2 minutes tops so I could get home. Unfortunately, it was in the rural side of town, where the houses are like a quarter mile from each other. I stopped in front of the 2-floor house and looked at it. I got the creepiest feels when I stared at it. Lawn not cut, with reeds, dead trees, and the old porch with no chairs or flower pots or tables, just plain. It seemed abandoned, but I got out anyways and knocked on the door. I was hoping my boss gave me the wrong address or something so I could get the hell out of there. Then the door lock started to shake and the door opened. It was an old lady, at least 70 years old or something around there, with white hair, teeth missing, and skinny, very short too, but her eyes just glaring at me. It really freaked me out. I figured if I was nice, things would turn out okay after all. "Pepperoni pizza, ma'am?" I said as friendly as I could. "Yes." she said with a hoarse voice as if she had a sore throat. Alrighty, here you go. I handed the pizza over, but she just looked at it with no emotion and didn't take it, getting her purse. Did you come with someone else? I froze, then quickly looked up at her, still glaring at me. That question really frightened me.
Ow, you hurt.
No, I said. Where's the other one? He ran off on me last time he came.
I guess.
Ran off,
2 hours,
I
I need to
thought.
go back to bed.
It didn't make sense. He quit some weeks ago, I said. Then she got her purse and started searching for money, or so I thought. She did for about a minute, the longest minute ever, and with the hands in her purse, she stopped and looked at me, not in a look of surprise or in confusion, but just like as if she was thinking really hard on something. I could tell she was holding something in her right hand inside the purse, but I couldn't see what. I really started to freak out at this point. What if it was pepper spray, or a knife, or even a gun? I mean, what could take her so long to get 10 bucks out of her purse? Then, behind her, I saw a shadow, a silhouette of a man coming to the door, and all of a sudden, I heard footsteps crushing the leaves on my left side next to the porch, and a man's deep voice saying, "Hey." I looked over and saw a head of a middle-aged man with a look of anger peeking over the porch. This guy then started to climb the porch, and that was when I realized I had enough. I darted to my car, threw the pizza inside, turned it on, and drove off. I didn't look back as I drove off in the dark. I had to lie and pay for the pizza out of my own pocket, but it was worth it. On the day I quit, I decided to tell my boss what happened that evening, to which he freaked out as well and asked me why I hadn't told him. He said James told him something like he just walked out of there and didn't pay attention to her. My boss then called the cops to look into the sketchy situation, and he told me I could leave. About 2 days later, he called back, saying the cops had the house registered as foreclosed for over a year, and they found 3 people living in there when they broke in, which were 2 men and the old lady I encountered. They were arrested, and he didn't tell me anything else. I'm still traumatized, and I don't know what would have happened if I would have waited. They could have easily jumped me, but thank God I quit afterwards, and I'm still alive. I'll never forget the time I was covering my friend's shift at a pizzeria we worked at. He was the delivery boy, while I was usually the one manning the register. On that night, I made 2 real deliveries to normal people. Then, my manager gave me one final delivery for the night. It was 5 miles away, which was a long drive for what I was used to. The GPS told me to turn off the highway into some very quiet town. Somehow, I'd never even heard of this town. The GPS took me down some side roads that were even more dead than the main streets in this town. Half of the street lights weren't even on. I didn't like the looks of this place. I just wanted to deliver the pizza and be gone. So I arrived to the house. It was a single-floor little thing. I rang the bell, and almost immediately, the door swung open. There was an older man, maybe in his upper 50s, that opened the door. His few hairs left on his head were gray, and he had a very pale face with a gray mustache. He gave me a and told me he'd be right back. He walked away into his house out of view, and I just stood there in the cold, waiting for him. I was a little uncomfortable with the area, and the looks of the guy answering didn't help. The sound of stomping on the creaky floors inside the house came to the door, as the man appeared back in the doorway with a smile. He said I should come inside where it's warm while I waited. I told him it's okay, but he just started nudging for me to come inside. I cannot justify my actions, but it was like 5 degrees outside. I foolishly stepped inside the sketchy stranger's house. He shut the door behind me and stepped off into another room in a hurry. It wasn't even much warmer in the house. He clearly didn't even have a heating system. I found myself creeping closer and closer to the door as I got more uncomfortable. Then, the man came out of another room and gave me another smile. He opened up a door, apparently leading to the basement. He looked down and told me that he normally leaves his money down there. He asked me to come down there with him, but I refused. Even from where I was standing, I could see it was totally pitch dark down there. And then, what happened next is where it all fell apart. I heard the sound of a creaking step coming from the basement. Somebody else was down there. I decided it was time to go and turned around to open the door, but the man was already right on top of me. I punched him in the face and managed to get him in a hold, but I heard somebody stomping up the basement steps, and I had to get out of there. I pushed the man to the floor, ran outside, got in my car, and drove off without looking back. I told my manager everything, and he called the cops, but I don't know whatever became of that. My manager gave me a couple days off afterwards. Since then, I am much wiser to the fact that you should never enter a stranger's house. I was out doing a delivery one late night. It was probably the longest drive I have ever taken for a pizza delivery. From the pizza place I worked at, it was a 20-minute drive, which isn't too crazy out where I live. Plus, they ordered 4 large pies, so I figured it was a party and I would get a much bigger tip. Navigating the dirt roads at night was always annoying though. I pulled up to the given address. It was some old, sketchy-looking building, literally in the middle of a forest clearing. There were no cars parked anywhere, or any lights on. I put my car in park and called my boss. I asked him to reread the address at least 3 times to make sure I typed it in right, but that checked out. I could tell he was in a really bitchy mood, and he told me to at least knock on the door and check it out. He would normally get mad if we took back 1 pie, but I was afraid of what he would do if I brought back 4. I was insanely unnerved, but got out anyway and forced myself to the front door of the building. There was no doorbell, so I just knocked really hard. I heard nothing, and didn't really expect to hear anything. I was extremely disappointed, not because nobody answered the door, but because I was realizing that it was all a waste of time and gas. I knocked one more time out of desperation, and then began to hear some kind of rustling noises from inside of the building. I knocked again and yelled that I was the pizza guy. There was silence now. I felt a bit more uncomfortable now than before. But before I could turn around, I noticed something at the window. There was someone looking through the window. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I noticed were their eyes. Their eyes were open wider than I knew possible, staring intently at me. I was disturbed enough by this and dropped the pizzas and ran back to my car. The shitty thing wouldn't start until turning the key for the 3rd time. I drove off the grass and back onto the dirt road, but I felt the car rocking about, shaking and bumping. Something wasn't right. I didn't make it far from the building before I started hearing a sharp scraping sound coming from outside. There was so much resistance that I couldn't even drive. The car came to a stop. I got out of the car to check what the hell was wrong. A chill ran up my spine as I began to feel like my heart was constantly skipping beats. My tires had been slashed and had completely fallen off the rim. Not just the front though. All 4 tires were slashed. I realized somebody did this when I was knocking on the door to that building. Instead of running, I got back in the car and locked the doors. I was so close to that building, I could practically see it from where I was, if it weren't for the trees blocking the view. I dialed 911 and explained everything to the operator. She told me the cops would be over as soon as possible and that I need to stay hidden. I asked her if it was advisable to stay in the car or run, and she told me it would be best to stay in the car with the door locked. She asked me to stay on the line with her until the cops arrived. My whole body was shaking. In all directions, there was nothing but dark, seemingly endless forest. I knew it would take forever for the cops to get there. I was not comfortable with sitting in that car so close to whoever did this. The next part, though, is what utterly destroyed me. It still shakes me to this day, and I hope nobody ever has to experience this kind of fear. As I was scanning all the windows, making sure nobody was outside, I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was the same person. The same person I saw at that window. Eyes open wider than ever. I could see now that it was a woman, and I could ever so slightly see a smile begin to spread across her face. I opened my door and full-on sprinted into the woods, not caring how much noise I made. I ran until I was out of breath, which didn't take long, and I hid behind a giant log on the ground. I tried to cover my loud breathing with my hand, as I waited and waited for what felt like hours, until I finally heard sirens in the distance. I gathered up all the stamina I had left to run all the way back in the direction of the dirt road. Eventually, the glowing red and blue lights came into view, and I had never felt better in my life. They were parked in front of my car, investigating with flashlights. I came out yelling at them like a lunatic to help me. I fell to the floor and started to gag, almost throwing up from running so much. They picked me up and began to question me, to which I explained everything to the best of my ability. One of the two cars drove over to the building, and the two officers began to search the building. They came back with nothing except for a couple of spiky objects. These objects were exactly the same as the ones used to slash my tires. The cops guessed that it was some kind of sick, demented couple, being that I saw the woman, but unfortunately they were never found, and that still kills me to this day. I obviously quit my job right after that and started working at a local grocery store. I know that I'll never forget seeing that woman at the back of my car.
It's coming. That was the guy. Go. Oh my god, I was being targeted best. Oh my god, I'm making...
Working as a pizza delivery boy, you'll run into a lot of strange things. However, this story may be an excessive example of that. I was 21 years old, and it was a late Friday night shift at John's Pizza, meaning I would be closing with my boss. It was about 9 o'clock, an hour before closing. My next delivery was to the Saugerties, the next town over. The drive wasn't too long, maybe 15 minutes. I was a bit confused. The map was taking me to an isolated road that seemed to lead to nothing. I drove down it anyway, and shortly realized it led to a house by the water. It seemed every light in the house was on. Upon getting closer, I could hear music blasting from inside the house, even with my window shut. Strangely, there were only 2 cars parked in front of the house, at least from what I could tell. It was a pretty wide open property. The front of the house faced the water, so the road, or driveway I suppose, curved around to the front by the water. As I walked up to the front door, I took more notice to the fact that the house was like brand new. I then rang the bell a few times since the music was so loud. I was caught completely off guard when 2 women opened the door, one blonde and one brunette, barely clothed. They had huge, flirty grins on their faces. The blonde woman grabbed the pizza while the brunette handed me a 20. I was about to ask where everyone was, but the brunette called me cute and asked me for my number. I thought I was about to get extremely lucky. After giving her my number, I was about to attempt at getting myself invited in, but the blonde immediately did that for me anyway. I entered the house and picked up on a rather unpleasant odor almost immediately, and there were literally no people anywhere, but I didn't care that much. The 2 women began to lead me upstairs, but unfortunately, this story did not go in the direction you may have hoped it would. I was literally on the 2nd step when a horrifying scream for help came from upstairs. I looked up there and then at the two women. They were looking at each other. The blonde one very clearly mouthed the word shit to the brunette. I didn't even really piece everything together at that moment, but I still just kind of instinctively knew to run. I must have looked back like 20 times before I was able to turn around the car and drive back down the long driveway. Looking back through the mirror, I shit you not, at each and every one of the windows in the house, there were heads peering out to me as I drove away.
Go, Bass.
Of course, I called the police on my way back to work and told them to check the place out. They did, and some investigator guy called me back not even an hour later, telling me whoever was there abandoned the place, and that, in fact, it was a brand new, just-built vacant house for sale. It didn't surprise me much. There was no party going on there. That same night, I got a text saying, "We know where you work." That was enough to drive me to quit that job. Since I mentioned a possible victim upstairs to the police, they came to my house to ask a series of questions about the people. I have also had my number changed since then, as I want no possible links to this incident, and I want to live with peace of mind. So it was my last delivery of the night at Domino's Pizza to a house that was about 10 minutes away from the shop. There was a note on the door, which I read after ringing the bell. It said, "To Pizza Guy, please let yourself in and leave the pizza in the upstairs bedroom. Money will be on the bed." Immediately, red flags were springing up in my head all over. I actually called my boss and told him I didn't feel safe going in there, and he actually told me it would be best to just go inside. I tried to use my charm, as people say I have, to persuade my boss, but he was hell-bent on me not bringing back that pizza. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in. It was an average-sized house with some furniture that seemed a bit aged. There was a small nightlight shaped like a candle on the wall, providing just enough light to see a bit into the living room and my way upstairs. There were no lights in any of the rooms up there. Just another candle nightlight. More red flags going off in my head. I come to the end of the small hallway upstairs. There are two doors, one open, one shut. The open door leads into a dark room, which I had to guess was the bedroom. As you may imagine, I was shaking in my shoes, afraid for any sudden sounds or movements anywhere. I pushed the door open completely and pressed my hand against the wall looking for the light switch. Found it. I flipped it on. Nothing. The lights didn't seem to work in this room. I very slowly walked over to the center of the room until something cushiony stopped my leg. There was a bed. I placed the pizza on the bed and began to search for the money in the dark. Just then, I heard the faintest, quietest thing come from outside of the room. I lifted my head and then resumed searching even faster. I was hoping to God it was just some kind of old person living here and they were too sick or nervous or whatever to meet someone. I found the money. It felt like 2 bills. I hoped they were 10s. I put them in my pocket and left the room. I stopped outside the room and saw the door to the other room was open. I could have sworn it was shut earlier. Your pizza's on the bed. Have a great day. I myself could hear the shake in my voice. There was no kind of response. I started to lean into the dark room to maybe get a better view. Too dark. I reached my hands into the room and searched for a light switch, but something grabbed my arm with a painfully tight grip and tried pulling me into the room. I screamed and jabbed at the arm with my keys, finally breaking free and getting back to my car. Nothing chased me out, nobody followed my car. I told my boss about it, and even talked him into giving me a raise for making me go through that hell. He didn't want me to call the cops for whatever reason. It wasn't really on the top of my mind, but in hindsight, I guess it would have made sense to get the police to check that place out. Anyway, not everything was terrible. I did get my pay raised from $7.50 to $8.50.
Oh shit, Bess.
I was never the delivery boy when I worked at Gino's Pizzeria, but when the new kid called out sick on like his second day, I had to take over for the night. It was a slow Tuesday night for deliveries, so it wasn't too bad. I had a manual 1998 Ford Mustang, a gas guzzler, so I in no way wanted to beat that car around town delivering pizzas. I made 3 normal deliveries within 3 hours. The place closes at 9 on weekdays, so I estimated 1 or maybe 2 more deliveries for the night. I picked up the phone to a customer who sounded like the definition of a meth head or something. She had a raspy voice, she stuttered, she forgot what she was saying, she had long pauses. Literally, there was like a 10-second gap between her saying, "Can I just get a..." and regular pizza. It was a huge production just getting the address from her. Sounded like she was asking someone in the background what the address was. Well, I was just so excited to meet these people. After she gave me the address, she hung up without me even telling her the price or how long. I told my chef, whose name was actually Mario, I know, a bit cliche, 1 regular pie. 10 minutes later, I was on my way. We live in the middle of absolute nowhere, so each delivery was a longer trip with a bigger tip. It took probably 10 minutes for me to get to the location. There was a long and dark gravel road through the woods and occasional trailer homes I had to drive through until I finally reached their home. It was a trailer home. The lights were off inside, but I could see the orange glow of a fire coming from out back, and I could hear a woman yelling at someone. When I shut the passenger side door after grabbing the pizza, I noticed the curtains to one of the windows move. Somebody was just watching me. I didn't know if I should knock on their door or go around back. It sounded like there was more than one person back there, so I decided to just go around back. I greeted them, and they spun around faster than a bullet. They were disgusting. They looked like typical trailer trash meth heads. The woman looked at, I'm guessing her husband, and asked what he's doing here. He then scolded her, saying she was the one who gave the address. They seemed to be standing close together to hide something behind them, and quite frankly, I didn't want to see what it was. I asked them if I should go around front, and then they whispered something to each other. The woman pointed at me and told me to wait there. She would go get the money. She went inside, and for the next 2 minutes, I awkwardly stood there trying not to stare at the scary-looking guy, who I knew was staring at me the whole time. Finally, the woman emerged from the house and went back next to the man. She handed the man some money and asked him to count it. She whispered something after that. I was getting very nervous now. I felt as if they were going to try and rob me or something. I wasn't stupid. The man started counting the money very slow. I mean, really slow, like 5, 10. I kept my eyes on the woman. She was looking into the woods behind me. And then she nodded her head, staring off behind me, and saw some huge guy approaching me with an axe in his hand. I flung the pizza box at him to try and slow him down, and somehow it worked. Or maybe he just didn't chase me. I got home safely. I didn't even go back to work that night. When Mario the chef texted me, I told him what happened, and all he said was, "Holy shit." That was it. I'm happy that was the only night I had to deliver. So if you live in the suburbs or city, sure, be a pizza boy. But if you live in the middle of nowhere, maybe try the supermarket instead.
Are you fucking serious? Okay, how many games we need? Yeah, 4. Fucking Christ's sake.
I'll never forget this night. The pizza place I worked at was about to close, and I was getting ready to go home when the phone rang. I was working the counter alone that night, so I was taking calls. I picked up the phone. There was complete silence, so I hung up. About a minute later, the phone rings again, so I pick up again. Still silence. I was about to hang up again when I heard the very weak and cold voice of an old woman on the other end. She said she wanted a regular pie delivered. I remained polite on the phone, but on the inside I was screaming. I just wanted to get home and end my shift. I called out to my boss that somebody is requesting a delivery. He told me I had to go. I was upset at first, but I realized it's another tip, and the old ones usually tip the most, so I decided it was okay. I took down the address and told her I would be there soon, but she had already hung up. I thought that was rude, but I ignored it and yelled to the chef that I needed one regular. My boss told me to just go home after the delivery as the place would be closed. So a little before 10 o'clock, I got in my car and put the address into my GPS. The house was 7 miles away. The GPS took me to the house. It was a small, one-floor house on a very quiet and empty block. I took the pizza and walked up to the door and rang the doorbell. There were no lights on in the house. I hoped that she hadn't given me the wrong address. I rang the doorbell again. There was still no answer. I was about to give up when I turned my head and saw somebody standing at the window. I got a little freaked out and backed up at first, but I eventually got closer to the window to see the person. It was an old woman, probably in her late 70s. She was just staring at me with a blank expression. I yelled to her through the glass that I had her pizza. She didn't react to what I said, so I screamed it louder. A big smile ran across her face. Not a pleasant, genuine smile. It was a smile that sent chills down my spine. I still remember that exact face she made through the window. I decided that I was freaked out enough and got back to my car and set the pizza in the passenger seat. I had to text my boss about this. I shot him a quick text and started my car, ready to get the hell away. I looked to my right to get one more look, to see the woman standing right outside my passenger side window, giving me the same stare she had given me before. I put my car in drive and floored it down the street, not looking back. My boss never made me do a late night delivery again.
This character before, man.
This happened 4 years ago when I was still in high school. I was told to do my last delivery of my shift. I got in my car, which was a 1999 Camry, perfect for delivering pizzas. I GPSed the address on my phone. I live upstate in the country, so all pizza deliveries were long drives. I remember the sun was starting to set, so it was probably around 7 o'clock. I'd say after a good 15 minutes of driving through the foresty dirt roads, my GPS said I had arrived. It was an old little cottage-like house made almost entirely of wood. It was sitting all by itself in the middle of absolutely nothing but forest. The lawn was completely unkept, as the grass was almost at knee height. I was used to this kind of thing, so I didn't think much of it. I took the pizza to the front door. There was no doorbell, so I knocked loudly on the door. Within 10 seconds, I heard the sound of footsteps hitting wood on the inside of the house. The footsteps made it to the door and stopped. I started to feel uneasy. I got the feeling that I was being watched. And that's when I noticed there was a peephole in the door. "It's the pizza guy," I called out. I heard a low, harsh-sounding voice on the other side of the door, telling me to bring the pizza out back. I didn't like the idea of going back there. Something didn't seem right. "Are you sure, sir?" I called out. He didn't answer my question. The sound of footsteps didn't move away from the door, so I had the feeling he was still watching me. I almost found myself walking back to my car, but I decided I didn't want any trouble with my boss. The last time I brought a pizza back, he gave me attitude, so I reluctantly walked through the uncut grass and around the small house to the back. I remember there was a shed and a little patio back there. In the patio, there was a table with 4 chairs surrounding it. In one of the chairs, facing away from me, I saw the head of somebody sitting in the seat. I began walking over and said, "Excuse me," but the person didn't even move an inch. "Excuse me," I said again louder. Then from behind me, I heard, "Over here." I turned around to see a man poking his head out from the corner of the house, looking at me with a crazed smile. "Come over here, I want to show you something." I freaked out, turned around, and ran around the house in the opposite direction, back to my car, for some reason still holding the pizza. I got in my car, started it, and got away from there. On my way back to the pizzeria, I pulled over to the side of the road and called the police. Eventually, I was informed that there was no sign of anybody having been in that house for a long time. I quit my delivery job a few days after that. I have no idea what would have happened to me had I gone up to that man, but to this day, I still wish I had just turned my head to see who or what was sitting in that patio chair. I was doing late night deliveries during this particular shift. When I worked this job, I lived in the Poconos. It was very rural up there. I often found myself driving down roads surrounded by nothing but trees, just like this night. Only it was dark and foggy this time. Driving down a shortcut to town that I had taken many times before, I slam on the brakes when I see somebody jump out from the bushes onto the road. The sickening bump and thump from the front of the car confirmed that I had hit the person. I put my hand to my forehead, cursing to myself. I couldn't believe what just happened. I just hit a person. I got out of my car and checked to see if they were alright. It was a man wearing a black hoodie with the hood up. He lay motionless by my car tire. I had no idea what to do. At this point I was panicking. Why the hell was this guy in the middle of nowhere? Why did he jump in front of my car? And then things got weirder. I can hear a scream for help, coming from the woods to the left of me. Somebody was in trouble. I looked at the man I hit with my car. He was still on the ground, motionless. I'd only be gone for a minute, I figured. For whatever stupid reason, I thought it was okay to leave the man behind, to go into the woods. I moved in the direction I heard the scream originally, hoping to hear another, but it was just total silence, except for the night creatures making their sounds. "Where are you?" I yelled out. It was at that moment I heard the sound of a foot crushing the leaves on the ground. I turned in the direction of the sound, and even in the dark and foggy weather, I could still make out the figure of somebody hiding behind a tree opposite me. I ran as fast as I could back to my car, looking back constantly to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I got back to my car, the man I had hit was gone. I didn't stick around to wonder where he went. I just got back in my car and proceeded down the road. My heart was racing the whole drive through, but I still ended up delivering the pizza. I got to the house, and when I rang the bell, a middle-aged woman answered. After paying, I noticed that her eyes focused on something behind me, and then she asked me, "They let you guys have delivery partners now?" I was confused and asked her what she meant, and she told me, "You got someone with you in your car." I felt a pain in my stomach as I turned and saw somebody sitting in the backseat of my car. I called the cops using the woman's phone, and they arrived shortly after, but the person in the backseat of my car was already gone. The scariest thing about this whole story, the police found a blood-stained knife on the floor of my car where the man was hiding. This memory still haunts me every day, and I can genuinely tell you, it's painfully scary just to imagine how things could have turned out if I hadn't made the delivery.
Brad, do you see that?
Yeah, I see that, man.
Yeah. Right there. Oh, there's just... I can't edit this. Han! Guys, we are starting. It's starting with you guys. Guys, please.
You need everyone to come there, isn't it? You have 2 tanks. We are so dumb, man, best. Oh, she best.
Update.
No, they.
I'm
How great, man.
this team like me.
Number 3. I'm a 22-year-old girl.
Best.
I was looking on Craigslist to buy a couch for my new apartment a month ago. I found something I thought seemed like a good deal. From the pictures,
okay,
the couch
man.
seemed to be in great shape.
Isn't it best?
The seller wanted to be
Just
contacted
want
by
the skin,
email.
you see.
His email was mexicanpoppy666@hotmail.com.
Oh no.
I felt that
Oh,
email
man.
was a bit
Oh.
off-putting, but
You
I
want to see
still went
something
ahead
funny?
and emailed the man
Let's
my
see
offer.
something funny, man.
He responded within 5 minutes, accepting the
Come on,
offer
dance!
and asking for my
Dance,
address.
What?
I honestly felt uncomfortable with his asking. I did not want a stranger coming to my house.
Alti is nothing, man.
I suggested that I just come to his house to pick it up, but he continually insisted that he come to my house. Eventually I stopped responding, and
What?
a day later, he emailed me again, giving me his address. I didn't know if I should go at that point, but it seemed like a steal, almost too good to be true. And according to his address, he didn't live too far. So I got in my van and drove over to the seller's house. I immediately noticed that the house was a bit smaller than all the other houses on the block. When I rang the bell, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap answered the door. He gave me a huge smile and invited me in. I was immediately feeling uneasy. He led me into his living room, and I saw the couch. Immediately, I saw scuff marks and small tears in the couch. It was not at all in the shape that it appeared in the ad. I commented on this, and he just smiled and offered to lower the price. I told him I'm not interested, and here's where things started getting creepy. As I was making my way out of the house, he put his hand on my shoulder and offered to give it to me for free if I was willing to, quote-unquote, give something to him. I let out a disgusted gasp and got back into my car. I didn't even look up out the window. I just drove away from there quickly. But it doesn't end there.
I don't know why
That same night,
wanted
I was
to
laying in my
guy.
bed watching TV, and I thought I heard somebody stomping up the steps of my porch. I muted the TV and was able to clearly hear the sound of somebody fiddling with my front doorknob. I jumped out of my
Why
bed
he
and
killed
tiptoed
the
over to
guy?
the front
I
door
don't
to look
understand.
through the peephole, but whoever it was already gone. And then, I could hear the sound of the gate to the backyard opening and closing. That was when I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. Soon after, I heard the sound of somebody fiddling with the doorknob to the back door of the apartment. I yelled to whoever it was that the police were on their way, and after that, I heard the sound of the gate opening and closing again. They were gone. This was a month ago, and nothing has happened since, but I still can't sleep at night. I'm 99% sure it was the man that was selling the couch. He must have followed me home. There's no way it was just a coincidence. I don't plan on using Craigslist anymore, and I'm still trying to find a new apartment. Number 2. I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all the typical car websites, cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal.
I tried, man.
About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, and good condition for only $3,500. This seemed like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone.
Oh, you see it?
He assured
Come
me
on,
that
dance.
there were absolutely no
Come
problems
on,
with the car.
dance.
He introduced
What you
himself
did
as
that?
Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on wiggling down the price as much as possible. I pulled up the dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes
Why you
early.
did that?
It was a tiny little house with a decent-sized property, only because I was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was open, so I walked over to see if anybody was inside, but except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car on the property was an old pickup truck. I went over to the front door to check the house
I want to say
numbers.
sorry, I
It
choose
was the right
wrong
address.
character.
The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give the man a call. So I dialed his number and I heard the sound of a cell phone ringing from inside the house.
Dance!
I was
Please!
extremely confused at this
Dance! Did
point.
they dance?
Now I knew I had the right house.
Yeah, you did dance, man.
I didn't understand why, if he was home, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see
They
if
did
anybody
dance
was
when I reached
inside.
my outie, man.
Peering through the glass, I couldn't really see much as it was pretty dark inside the house.
Oh no.
I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set, but across from that,
Oh no.
I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside.
Help.
I figured that must have been Bob, so I knocked on the window, but he didn't even move.
I tried.
There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car. I looked up one last time before driving off. The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, but I could see two of the blinds bent open. Somebody was at that window watching me. You can probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human being, the fact that there was no car there leads me to believe that whoever that man wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back door. Number 1. I was looking to buy the iPhone 5 about a year ago. I found a guy on Craigslist who was selling his for $200. He claimed it was in mint condition and that he wanted to upgrade to the 5C. I didn't know much about how to go about testing a phone to make sure everything works, so I brought my little brother along who knew a lot more than I did. We met halfway at a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot at like 10 o'clock at night. Two large, intimidating guys stepped out of a black Honda Civic and walked over to us. One of the guys pulled out the phone and showed it to me. It didn't have a scratch on it. My brother took out my SIM card and popped it into this new phone. He did some testing and told me that it works. The guy then asked for $250, even though he originally asked for $200. I lied and told him I only brought $200, and he seemed a bit unhappy with this. I did have $250, but I didn't want to spend more than his original asking price. I kind of figured it was his way of making sure I didn't haggle down the price. I handed the guy the $200, and he and his buddy got back in their car. We got back into my car, and I tested out the new phone by calling my girlfriend. I sat testing things around for about 5 minutes. My brother commented on the fact that the two guys hadn't left yet either, but I didn't really care. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. My brother then commented that the two guys started their car just as I had. I didn't find it too weird. I drove down the turnpike and eventually stopped at a red light. That's when I noticed the black Honda Civic pull up right behind us in my rear view mirror. I found that a bit weird since I was sure they came from the opposite direction. I continued my drive home, but every single turn we made, they followed, and close on my tail too. My brother suggested I pull over, but there was no way I was going to do that. I knew those guys were looking for trouble. It got to the point where I was trying to lose them and started driving dangerously. If they needed something, they would call or at least honk their horn, but they were looking for some kind of trouble. I tried something risky to lose them. At an intersection, the light had just turned red. I floored it across the intersection before any of the cars would begin to pass. My brother shouted at me, calling me stupid and crazy, but it worked. They didn't follow. We got home after the extra long drive. My heart was still racing from the intensity of the situation. I was just happy I got a working phone for such a low cost. Later that night, I was playing around with the phone, trying to set some things up before going to bed. My parents and brother were already asleep at this point, and just then, the sound of 2 car doors slamming shut outside interrupted me. I looked out my window, and I felt like my heart completely stopped. The black Honda Civic was parked across the street. I could only assume the 2 guys were already halfway to our front door. I immediately woke up my dad and explained everything as quickly as possible. He got up, grabbed a baseball bat, and crouched behind the front door. A loud came at the front door. My dad screamed at them to go away. One of the guys on the other side of the door claimed to have a gun, and said that he would shoot the lock off of the door if he didn't open up. My dad told me to call Joe, our friend who lives 2 doors down who happens to be a police officer. I called Joe and he said he would be right over and to stay hidden. Here's the part that still scares me to this day. There was the sound of a silenced shot of a pistol. I peeked over and saw a bullet hole in the door, inches away from my dad's head. My dad ran away from the door and we all listened. We heard Joe outside yelling at them to drop their weapons. My dad went outside to help when they lowered their guns. Joe arrested the two assholes. I have to say, this was the scariest day of my life, but it was also the best I had ever felt in my entire life.
We can't.
This is a popular story with my family and most of my friends. Amanda is my brother's girlfriend. At the time of this story, she was looking for her first apartment and moving out of her parents' house. Her and my brother didn't want to move together since they'd only been dating for a few months. She opted instead to search for a roommate online. Browsing Craigslist, she found an ad titled something like, "Roommate Wanted, Females Only." This sort of thing was common since the area she was looking in was mostly young professionals. The listing was for a room in a house for about $225 a month, which was quite cheap compared to most of the other places listed. The occupant listed herself as a 23-year-old college student that wasn't comfortable with living with any males. The other roommate would have their own room and attached bathroom. So far, Amanda was into this place. However, the listing only had a single photo from outside the property. Amanda sent an email wanting to meet the occupant and tour the house. Within 30 minutes, she receives an email back with all the details and time to stop by. The girl worked late hours and wanted Amanda to stop by at 8 p.m. When Amanda arrives, there's a handwritten note on the front door saying, "Door broken, use back door." Walking around the house, it looks nice, but slightly unkempt. Tall grass, weeds, dusty windows, etc. Still no alarms for Amanda though. When she knocks on the back door, an older man opens the door. At first, Amanda thinks that she has the wrong house, but the man reassures her and says that the occupant was out and that he was the landlord. The occupant asked him to meet Amanda since she was working late. He seemed pleasant and offered to show her around. Alarms start going off, but aren't at red alert yet. First, the guy was clearly in his 40s, unshaven, and looked like he lived in his car. Also, only the kitchen light was on. As they walked around the house, Amanda noticed one huge red flag. No furniture. Nothing. The landlord was polite about answering questions, but seemed irritable to keeping the lights on for too long, rushing her around and only letting her look at rooms for a few moments. There was a single room that the landlord wouldn't open, telling her that it was the occupant's room and he didn't want to invade her privacy. As they walked down the hall into the living room, she notices the front door has a plank nailed across it.
What? The guy,
quote-unquote
the
broken
guitar
for
guy
sure.
is so noob.
Amanda's creepometer is starting to ding, so she decides to wrap up the walkthrough and leave, but trying to be polite. As she's giving the guy her "thanks for the showing" bit, he perks up and states that he forgot to show her the basement. He claims it's recently furnished and would be a great rec room, and she should take a look down there. At the time, Amanda and the landlord are standing in the small hallway between the front living room and the back kitchen. In this little hallway was the basement door. When he opens the door, it opens outward to create something of a barrier between Amanda and the back door. The basement is pitch black. He smiles, motions down the stairs, and says, "Ladies first." What happens next is nothing more than a stroke of luck. Amanda gets a text just as some random person parks in front of the house. Thinking on her feet, she pretends it's a phone call and answers her phone. "Hey, yeah, are you here? I'll come out from around back and let you in." "It's great, you have to see it." With a motion of confidence, she excuses herself around the landlord and walks out of the back door. She says the guy just looked at her like he was confused. Once outside, she sprinted to her car and sped like hell out of there. When Amanda got home, she told her mother and my brother everything. Cops were called. They took her statement and went to investigate. The Craigslist post had been removed. The house had been foreclosed over 6 months earlier. It was found out that the house had been foreclosed over 6 months earlier and the property had been abandoned. Found that the closed room that the so-called landlord didn't want her to look in was where the man had been staying. There was a pile of old dirty blankets, rotten food, and empty gallon jugs everywhere. More creepy was he had plastered ripped up pages from porno magazines on all the walls in the room. The really scary part of this was the basement. The man had tied a thin piece of fishing twine at about shin level across the stairs about halfway down. The basement was empty except another pile of old blankets, a broom handle wrapped in leather belts, and a small box with a few rolls of assorted tape. I was up late looking for goalie equipment on Craigslist some night in the summer. I was only 14 and had no job and therefore no money, so I had to find the cheapest deal possible. I didn't really care about the condition of anything. I came across an ad that seemed like a steal. The pictures showed the pads, blocker, glove, and stick. They were all in visibly good condition. It was only listed for $50. That seemed like an insane deal. I contacted the seller via text and he asked me a few questions, one of which was how old I am. I responded 14 and he told me he's glad to hear that I'm dedicated at a young age. It didn't really seem weird to me what he said at the time, but now that I look back on it, I should have been wiser. I asked the seller for his address, but he instead asked me what town I'm from and that he could just meet me somewhere walking distance from my house. I didn't know how I felt about this, but I really wanted that equipment. We agreed to meet in the parking lot of the mall, which is literally down the block from my house. I stood alone in the exact spot I described for a few minutes, until I heard somebody toot their horn. I noticed a white van parked away from all the other cars, and then I received a text saying that he was in the white van. I replied telling him to come out with the equipment, but he said it would be easier to do the transaction in the van. I had a really bad feeling about this and hightailed away from there. I ran down the block, and when I looked back, I saw the white van driving down the street behind me. Now there was someone in the passenger side as well. I didn't want to lead them to my house, so I cut into some random person's backyard and hopped over the fence. I was on the opposite side of the block now, hiding behind a bush. Within 20 seconds, the white van passed by and turned the next turn, vanishing from sight. It was safe to run back to my house now. My parents flipped shit on me when I told them about it. I didn't get the tag number or a good look at their faces, so all they could report was a suspicious white van. The Craigslist ad was taken down, so I couldn't show it to my parents. I thought it was over, but that night, I heard a vehicle engine running outside. I looked out my window down to the street and saw the white van sitting across the street, but as soon as I looked out the window, the van drove off down the road out of sight. I haven't seen it since. I don't know if they saw me or not, or if they somehow found my address. It makes me paranoid to this day.
There's too many people at here.
I was selling a dining room set on Craigslist. I listed it for $1,200, but put slightly negotiable in the title. It was a good-looking set, but I wasn't getting any offers. I did live in the country though, so not a lot of people lived in my town. I finally received a call about the set. The man on the other end of the phone had a very shaky voice, and he sounded a bit off, but I can't really explain how. He wanted to check out the set to make an offer, so I gave him my address, and he said he would be over within the hour. I dusted off all the furniture one more time to make it look as nice as possible. The doorbell rang within 10 minutes. I was shocked. He must have lived really close, which in my area was very surprising. I opened the door and immediately felt uncomfortable about letting this man into my house. He was wearing a white undershirt with yellow stains scattered all over it. His pants were way too baggy and had a few tears in them. His gray mustache stained brown in the middle, and his hair a complete mess. Basically everything you shouldn't look in public, he looked. Basically everything you
It's okay,
shouldn't
man.
look in public, he looked.
I'm not
He
scared.
greeted me with a hello in the same shaky voice as before. I invited him in and he immediately caught a glimpse of the dining room set, since the dining room is the
What is
first room
this?
you see
I
in
don't
the house.
understand what's that.
He began walking around really slowly,
And then file-
making
very
weird
mean.
sounds and making sure to feel every inch of every piece of
Very mean.
furniture. I was very
Yeah.
weirded out watching this and decided to break the silence by bringing up the price.
Oh, I found him, man.
I reminded him that my asking price was $1,200, and then he stopped, looked up at me, and gave me the most unnerving smile I had ever seen. How about 500? He asked me. I laughed a bit at the insane offer, almost thinking
Oh,
he was
Beth, you see?
joking.
I can
But when
see
his
him.
smile turned to an angry expression, I knew he wasn't. I apologized and told him that's much too low for me. The lowest I would be willing to go is 1,000. The man then started acting even weirder. He put his hands up to his head and started making strange noises again,
go, man.
pacing back and forth. He then looked at me with a look of anger and hatred. This man was not right in the head. I realized it just then and there, and I needed him out of my house. I apologized to him again and thanked him for coming, which was the most obvious way of me letting him know it was time for him
Oh,
to
man.
leave. But he didn't move. At this point, the stare he was giving me was obviously a stare of malice.
Oh my.
This man was much bigger than me, and I didn't think I could take him in a fight. But then the man moved his hand to his back pocket, and I quickly assumed he was reaching for a gun. I ran upstairs to my bedroom to my closet, leaving the man alone in the dining room. In my closet, I grabbed my .45, loaded it, and took cover behind the wall, sneaking a peek into the dining room. The man was gone. I went back to my room and locked the door. I called the police and took cover behind my bed in the meantime. It felt like hours before I heard the police sirens outside my house. However, I stayed put behind my bed. For all I knew, that man was right outside my bedroom door. Thankfully, I hadn't locked the door, and I heard the police enter my house.
He ran away.
I left the bedroom with my hands raised and showed them my ID.
Beth,
They had
ran
me wait
away
outside
and I
while they
have-
continued their search. I sat there for probably 5 minutes before the 2 police officers stepped out of my house, with the man in handcuffs. They told me something disturbing. He was hiding in my pantry closet with a loaded gun. I feel it's only a miracle that the police weren't shot at, but the thing that still haunts me the most to this day was the look that man gave me through the window of the police car as it drove off. A look of malice and hatred, like the first thing he would plan to do after getting out of jail would be to come back for me. I'm still thinking about moving. I can't deal with the constant paranoia of that man coming back. All I can say that can be learned from this is to be very careful when giving your address to people from Craigslist.
Oh no. That guy is so far away. What are you doing?
Fucking noob.
Are you actually?
It was the summer of 2012. I have a late birthday, so I was still 15 when all my friends were 16. They all had jobs for the summer, but nobody would hire me because I was only 15.
Oh my god.
Go.
I started looking for off-the-books jobs on Craigslist. I found an ad titled, "Looking for House Cleaning Services, Paying $10 an Hour."
Okay, we got 2 minutes.
The ad had 2 pictures of the house, one outside and one inside.
You got
It was a typical middle-class house. He lived in the next town over. The only way to contact him was by email, so I emailed him telling him I was only 15 years old and was willing to clean his house for $10 an hour. He responded in 10 minutes, telling me his work schedule and when he would need me to be available. I told him that was okay, and then he asked me if I had means of transportation to get there every day. I didn't even realize that my mom wouldn't be able to drive me every day.
3%.
Oddly, he
how-
offered to give me a lift to and from every single day.
What the fuck?
He said he worked close, so coming home to give me a ride wouldn't be a problem. I agreed without even asking my mom, so the man asked for my address. I gave it to him, and he said he would be over at 8:30 a.m. on Monday to pick me up. Come Monday, I met him outside. He drove a black '05 Nissan Maxima. He himself had a black beard and a Mets hat on. He didn't seem dressed ready to go to work, but I didn't think much about that.
Wow.
He introduced himself as James, and then dropped me off and gave me the key. He told me to just straighten everything out and such. Then he drove off in a hurry. I found it really weird that he trusted me, a 15-year-old he had never met, to be in his house alone. His house wasn't even too messy. All I did was just fold some clothes, wash some dishes, and used a hand vacuum to clean some of the carpets. The only problem, it was extremely hot in the house, even hotter than outside. It seemed all the windows were sealed shut, and I didn't want to turn on the AC without permission. This went on for 6 hours before he came back, handed me $60, and dropped me off back home. He seemed extremely nice, and I felt I had lucked out finding that ad. This went on for a good 2 weeks, and my mom was okay with it since James was actually paying me. Then, one Friday night, I woke up feeling really thirsty, so I got up to get some water. I looked out my window, and I saw somebody standing there looking into my room. I screamed, and my parents came running over, but the person outside took off before they got there. The next time I went in, it was at least 100 degrees outside. I asked James if I could turn on the AC, but he said it was broken. He told me to just take off my clothes if I got hot. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he was serious. I felt really uncomfortable after that. He dropped me off, and I did the same work that I had been doing. It was at least 105 degrees in the house. I had to work shirtless and constantly go outside where it was just a little cooler. The day dragged on, but I just barely made it through. The next day, on the way to his house, James told me that he had the day off from work. He told me he would just help me out. I was not happy to hear this. I would rather just be alone in the house. He seemed to slowly follow me into whatever room I went to clean. I eventually had to go to the bathroom, so I ran upstairs and made sure he wasn't following me. But in the bathroom, I made a shocking discovery. Up in the corner of the room, I found a small camera pointing from out of the wall, just barely visible. I scanned the room for more, and sure enough, there was one in the bottom corner as well. I started searching the whole bathroom for more cameras. I checked under the sink, but what I found was much worse. There were 2 huge stacks of VHS tapes, each one with a sticky note attached with someone's name on it. The one on the top was my name. I almost threw up then and there. I had to find a way to get home safely. James then knocked on the door, asking if I was alright. I said I wasn't feeling good, and asked if he could drive me home. He said okay. I stepped outside, and he told me he had to go as well, so he stepped into the bathroom. For the first half of the car ride, he didn't say anything to me, and the road he was taking me on wasn't familiar. In fact, I noticed that the direction we were heading in was the complete opposite of my house. Where are we going?" I asked. He looked at me and said, "What were you doing in the bathroom?" I started to panic. I didn't answer, so he asked again in a much angrier voice. We were stopped at a traffic light, so I took that opportunity to unlock the door and escape the car. I ran away from sight before calling my mom, crying into the phone, telling her to pick me up. She came over as soon as possible. She immediately reported James, and the police found the tapes under his sink. Some of the tapes contained much worse things than kids just cleaning the house. The scariest thing, some of the kids seen in the tapes are still missing to this day. He was arrested and tried for child pornography, kidnapping, and some other charges. I'm happy I jumped out of that car, because I don't know where he was taking me. This happened about 3 months ago. Me and my roommate decided on getting a used couch, so I thought Craigslist would be a great place for used furniture. I scrolled through about 3 pages before finding a black leather couch. It was in really good condition, and it had a really good price, around $200. I told myself this was too good to be true. And man, I should have listened to myself. We arranged a price, and the guy told me to meet him at his place over email. My roommate was out working overtime, so I had to go alone. The address was a little ways out of town. The house was surrounded by trees. You had to go through the drive-thru to be able to see it. I got out of my car and knocked on the door. This house was different. It was small and wooden, and it looked pretty eerie. When I knocked the third time, I heard creaks on the wood floor coming from inside. Anyone could tell it was footsteps, but it sounded like they were tiptoeing. Then, I heard a faint, muffled voice through the door. "Hey, are you the couch guy?" But they sounded pretty rushed. So I responded, yes I am." He said back, "Okay, come around back, the couch is there." I felt a little weirded out by it, but I brushed it off. When I came around back, I saw something that I won't forget. I saw 4 tall men dressed in black robes with their hands together, and in front of them was a pit with a hatch and chain on it. Then I heard the same voice say, "Where's your friend?" I booked it out of there and frantically shoved the key in my car and started it. I looked out the mirror and saw the front door fly open. I shifted into first and floored it out of there. The thing that makes me uneasy to this day is that in the emails, I never told him I had a roommate.
That's why. He died.
I was about 12 years old. I was looking for some craft storage since I got a lot for Christmas. The ones at the stores were really pricey, so me and my 27-year-old sister looked for some on Craigslist. We found someone offering a huge tote for only $10. That would mean getting a $90 discount, so we checked it out. The person lived relatively close to us, so we gave the guy our email. He emailed us within an hour and asked where we should meet. I said we should meet at Dollar Tree since it was a short walk away. He, to my surprise, asked to meet at my home. I lived in an apartment, so that would be inconvenient, so I said that we lived farther away. He said he could drive, but we said no. So we eventually said it was okay to meet at Dollar Tree, but he could only meet up at 9 p.m. I said that's okay, even though it would be dark by then. He said to meet up today. My sister worked a night shift tonight, so she said I could walk there and back and to just bring my wagon so I could just put the tote in it. She gave me $10 and I started walking at 8:30. I arrived just on time and I saw an old knocked up 06 Kia. I assumed it was him, so I yelled, "Hey, got the tote?" He got out of his car and said he left it at home. He asked if I wanted to take a drive with him to his house. I said I can't because it wasn't okay with my family. He said he would drive me home, and I firmly said no. He said if I came with him that I could get the tote for free. I got a very uneasy feeling. He said, "Hey, your address is 234 Letter Road, right?" My heart dropped into my stomach. I got freaked out and ran all the way home. I got home and ran upstairs like a demon was chasing me. I got in my room and locked all the doors and windows. I also covered them with black clothing and such. That night I was shaking like crazy. And then, I heard a hefty man coming up the stairs. Almost no one on my floor was up this late, and no hefty man lived there. I heard a voice, and I almost fainted. "Hey, you still want that tote? It's down in my car. Come help me get it." I almost puked and fainted. I looked through the peephole to see the man's back facing my door. I watched him turn around, and I covered the peephole with a black shirt I had laying around from before. The doorknob started to wiggle. I went under the sink cabinet and was silent as a worm. He started to try to kick the door down, and eventually he did. I felt like I was ready to die. I grabbed an old broom that was sitting in the cabinet. The kicking down of the door woke up my neighbors who came running in with a baseball bat. My neighbor whacked the guy in the face with the bat and the guy fell to the floor. I got out with the broom and gave the man a wimpy whack before he stood up and tried to grab me. I physically jumped down the stairs and ran down the street to my sister's work like I was going to die, and I thought I was. I ran to the nurse's station and started to have a down. I was crying and almost throwing up, and the nurses looked at me like I was just raped or something. I told them that a man was following me and was going to kill me. They got my sister and called the police. It turned out he was a serial rapist. Me and my sister moved and she went away to college.
Oh no, they got infection. Okay, no, I don't want to die.
When you decide to use Craigslist, make sure you deal local, and if something seems too good to be true, it usually is. I was 20 years old, still driving my grandpa's old Buick that he handed down, and I hated it. I wanted to drive something cooler and something more age-appropriate. Well, I was making decent money, and I wanted to buy a Mustang, so I started searching Craigslist. And within a week, I found something that seemed unbelievable. A 2013 blue Mustang GT convertible, manual transmission, no accident history, with only 32,000 miles, and a shockingly low price of $16,000. I saw the ad was just posted 4 minutes ago, so I knew I had to act fast. I called the number listed, but it just went to voicemail. I called again, and this time on the 4th ring, a man picked up the phone. I told him I was interested in the car, and he started laughing and joking about how he had just listed it a few minutes ago. He honestly sounded almost too normal and friendly. He gave me his address, and I told him I'll be over at 6 to check it out. After hanging up and realizing this guy sounded normal, I was just so excited to think that I had just found such a good deal. I GPS'd the location. It was a long drive, about an hour. It took me far away from the suburbs that I was used to. The GPS said 2 minutes remaining in the drive, and I was kind of confused. The area I was in was very rural and poor. I pulled up to what the GPS said was the house. It was a shitty, run-down old thing. I noticed there was no Mustang anywhere in sight. I felt uncomfortable with even getting out of the car. In fact, I just sat there looking at the house for a good 5 minutes, trying to decide if I should even go and knock on the door. An hour isn't by any means a short drive, but when something seems as sketchy as this seemed, you would understand.
Yes, good.
I saw the blinds from the window begin to shake, and then the front door opened, and a man, probably in his 50s, came outside. He gave me a wave and a smile. He actually looked somewhat normal. I turned the car off and went out to greet him. I asked him where the car was, and he said it was in the garage. He told me to follow him back inside. I didn't know why he was leading me into his house instead of the garage, but I went anyway. He made sure to shut the door behind me, even though I was going to myself. I was able to get a good look of his house, and I must say, it smelled disgusting, and it didn't have much, if any, furniture. He led me down a small flight of stairs and to a door. I heard some noises coming from beyond the door. The man just explained that it was his friend working on the car. That seemed weird. I also began to hear creaking coming from upstairs, as if someone was walking around. He looked up and said that must be his wife. I found it weird that he had to explain these noises. I wouldn't have thought it was weird otherwise. He finally opened the door, and I got a quick glimpse of his garage. It was completely empty. I took a look at the man, and as he stared back at me, I knew it was time to go. I didn't say anything, I just turned around and ran for the door, but somebody was standing there blocking it. I offered to give them all the money in my wallet to let me go. And then the first guy walked into the room with some sharp metal tool in his hand. I don't know what it was called, but I fled from the room in the opposite direction of the front door, and thankfully found the back door. I fled into the backyard and went around the house to my car. I made it inside and started the engine. I stared at the house one more time. Nobody followed me. I saw the front door open again, and the two men from inside stood behind the storm door and just seemed to stare me down. I gave them the finger and drove off halfway down the road before calling the cops. I stayed nearby until I saw the cops pull up to the house. The two men, or however many people were in that house, were gone. Nobody had actually lived in that house for years. I went home feeling angry and disturbed, but also grateful that I escaped with my life. That night, I got a phone call from an unknown number at like 2 in the morning. I didn't answer, and they didn't leave a voicemail. 10 seconds later, I got a text from the same number saying, "Look outside your window." I had my blinds down and feared what might be on the other side, but I had a pretty good feeling. I called the cops yet again, letting the person outside know that I was as well. They arrived in a surprising 3 minutes and began to search the whole premises. They found him hiding in my bush outside my window. He was arrested. His name is Tony Schelling. He was, in fact, the same person I met at the house. My message to all is to not be an idiot while using websites like Craigslist.
I play about match of this.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, breathe. How do you feel?
Good, man. Oh, very tired, man, Beth.
Actually, enjoy myself.
Yeah, it's a good game, man.
Evidently, because we I told you right. Become the character of YouTube. That's right. You won't understand. I actually very surprised that we win. Yeah. Actually, they voting us. Do you know that?
Yeah, Beth.
We have two more. Come on, man.
Oh, we can win. Oh, I'm tired. Oh,
Come on.
oh, we got 2 tank Beth.
We had to do it. Alright.
Yeah, we just need to touch the tip of the. Oh,
They have level 52. No, we have level 52. Oh, easiest game. Believe me. Just we have level 52. Can't we lose this, right?
yeah, man. If we lose this, what you gonna say, man?
Then I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. We have Nova. Nova is a good character. What do you mean?
And also SG Hammer, man.
We have Daimyo as well. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Man. But they have 3 tag. Yeah, 3 tag. Not again. Oh, 3 tag. I feel strongly. 3 tag. Red.
It's okay, man.
Red. They have 3 tag. Red. They have 3 tag. You don't understand. You never understand that they have a 3 tag.
Oh, I'm tired.
Give us a subscribe. Braun Strowman written off TV. Kurt Angle's not here, but don't worry, Roman Reigns sure is. I'm Ollie Davis, and despite Michael Cole telling me this week's Raw was in London, England, I'm not 100% sure. Even when I was physically in the audience, I can't be sure. There was neither a red phone box on the stage nor a black cab. But I do know one thing, this is the 8th of May 2017 edition of Monday Night Raw, in about 4 minutes. Dean Ambrose opened the show by announcing Kurt Angle won't be here tonight. Boo! So he's been made the acting general manager, which he was informed about as the show was going on air. Kayfabe WWE management do realise they can plan episodes in advance, right? Time doesn't just stop outside 8 to 11 Eastern on Monday nights. Ripping open even more logic holes, The Miz then said, actually, Stephanie McMahon just made him the co-actor acting general manager of Raw, giving us the night's narrative thread. Ambrose and Miz booking matches last minute, so art sometimes does imitate life. Their first act was putting Braun Strowman against Kalisto, one of the 3 people ever to have beaten the monster among men. Let that sink in for a moment. Yeah, it's ridiculous. The first match, though, was Ambrose booking his co-GM against Finn Balor. The Miz awarded himself the victory after shenanigans, but not on Dean's show. Ambrose banned Maurice from ringside and restarted the match, which Finn won almost immediately. Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax are actually developing a very interesting relationship, a kind of status-reversed Neville and TJP. Bliss brought her new frenemy down to ringside to beat Mickie James. Nia is much more impressive live than what she comes across on TV, with her offense actually looking like it hurts. Probably because it does. Braun Strowman finally overcame one of his most devastating opponents, beating Kalisto via disqualification when Roman Reigns came down to interfere. Roman got the most crowd reaction of the entire show. The wrong kind, of course, receiving thunderous boos. The 2 brawled outside, steel chair and all, and Braun hobbled off through the crowd, reportedly writing him off TV because of an elbow injury. Watch today's Wrestle Talk News to find out more on that. It's time for Tag Team Turmoil, with such Raw teams as Sheamus and Cesaro, The Club, and Enzo and Cass. Of course, Enzo and Cass. Don't know why.
Yeah, man. Look at me, best.
The Golden Truth, obviously. They just had a really good semi-serious backstage promo before this match, and
I have fun, man.
Sheamus and Cesaro ran through Enzo and Cass. Rhino and Heath Slater, there it is. The Club, which was the best in-ring worked portion of the entire night. And the Golden Truth to become the Hardy Boys' #1 contenders. This was smartly booked, still presenting Sheamus as heels, despite them being slotted in the typical overcome-all-odds babyface spot. Samoa Joe cut a great promo about how Seth Rollins would hear every ligament pop before their match. It went 15 minutes, which felt very long live, and ended with a Rollins DQ win after Joe used the exposed turnbuckle. The crowd were getting tired by this point. The third hour, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Gallagher. Watching a 3-hour Raw from home is mostly tough going. I can now tell you from first-hand experience, watching it live in the crowd is even worse. Despite homegrown wrestler Gallagher in the ring here, the audience lost interest and decided to make their own fun, mainly with Beach Baller Mania 3 and a guy next to me drunkenly yelling, "I love you, Alexa Bliss!" Alexa Bliss wasn't even in the ring. TJP beat Jack Gallagher in barely 3 minutes by grabbing the tights. Gallagher lost, so we are in England. Sasha Banks beat 205 Live's mid-card title Alicia Fox in another barely 3-minute match. Fox busted out a beautiful-looking Northern Lights suplex, but seemingly botched the pin, accidentally raising her shoulder on 3. Bray Wyatt took on Dean Ambrose in the night's main event, which the Eater of Worlds won after the Miz's interference. Dean was somewhat protected by kicking out of a championship opportunity to the skull, with Wyatt having to deliver a Sister Abigail to finish him off. So that was this week's Raw in about 4 minutes. Here's the usual ratings recap from top to bottom. In all, core, average, poor and bore. I'll reveal my rating very shortly, but first vote in the poll above my head to give yours. I'll announce the results in tomorrow's Wrestle Talk News. I've always said to people, look, even if WWE isn't your thing, you should still go to their live shows because you'll have fun. That's been my past experience. Watching at home is one thing, being there live is another. I'm sad to say I can no longer make that recommendation. Despite being surrounded by awesome people and having a lot of fun before the show started, experiencing an episode of Raw live, that is not a house show, was painful. My best guess is that WWE's current television product very poorly translates to a live crowd, which is why the audience sounded so dead on TV throughout the night, because the show was, to be frank, boring, predictable, long. The only real pops were for entrances and finishes. UK wrestling crowds are considered among the world's rowdiest, but there's only so much we can do. The poor crowd reaction isn't the audience's fault, it's WWE's. This week's Raw is bore. Batista has called out WWE for backstage bull poop in a new interview, and Titus O'Neil is being sued for allegedly beating up a WWE cameraman. Click the videos to the left to find out more and press subscribe. I've been Ollie Davis, and that
How many
was wrestling.
people he can spawn? Jesus Christ.
Oh my. That was good.
That's so OP.
I see trees.
I never seen that before, but yeah.
In my sight.
You have some skill. It's true.
I never tread lightly.
Choose a talent.
Let's go, Brad. Let's go, Brad.
Rolling. Ready to drop the hammer.
Down. Brad. Go down.
To pull back.
Not again. Brad. So slow. Oh my god. That guy was so lucky. I have to say that the Yami, the one who can summon tree, listen over there.
Glad. Uh-oh. Roasting.
That really best. Holy shit. Yeah, dude.
I never tread lightly.
That's so good, man.
That guy is so OP. There's no way you can beat him.
The temple's magic subsides. Find something else to fight over.
There's no way. Well, you want to capture the boss. That's me. Capture it.
I never tread
Come on, catch it.
Absolutely.
Let's go. Oh, they have out right now. They have out.
Get the hell out of Dodge.
You go back, Beth. You go back.
Rock and roll. We ought to capture this mercenary king.
But before we...
Oh, Brad.
Must retreat. Absolutely.
They're coming. Oh no! Brad, I'm dying. Brad, I'm. Brad.
Lose it.
I'll go back. I'm going to the temple right now. ASAP.
My magic flows through the temples. Guardians, do not let these mortals approach them. Fought lost heroes.
Have to win this one.
Your enemy has destroyed
Oh no. We're gonna lose one tower, Brad. We're gonna.
Music to my ears.
I tell you, man. Oh.
Now the rest.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yes, rid their force from my land.
Oh!
Light the way.
Hey,
Delighted.
got two people. Look at that.
I guess. Well.
Proceed.
Let's take the boss fast. Oh.
No. This is someone. What? Are you dying?
Yeah, I did, man. I'm dying.
Oh no.
I'm way too tired to play already. Oh, just I'm reading. Oh, one sleeping.
Oh my god. Actually, that guy is totally
Ready to roll out.
Oh, best.
Proceed.
You can keep on doing that.
That's way too OP, man.
What? You can keep on doing that. That's
The light of the sun grows within the temples. Soon they shall bask in my glory.
Brad. You're the wrong place, Brad. You're the wrong place, Brad.
Oh, way too tired, really best.
Only way to win.
Rock and roll.
Ah, what does that mean? I'm way too tired for this shit, man.
Only left me. What?
It's too OP.
Guys, really?
Ready to roll out.
Fine.
Delighted to, sir.
What is?
Best, let's
We ought to
take
capture
this.
this mercenary camp. This'll be a blast. Delighted to, sir.
Help me, Brad. Help me.
Yeah.
Nice shot. I got this.
You have stolen enough of my temple's power. Return to your war.
I got this.
Choose a talent.
Oh my god.
Affirmative.
Get Brad.
What? The guy can follow us? Ah. Oh, that. Just let that leave it. Just let it leave.
Just accept we lose, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
There's no way. We just reverse the one. How do we reverse the second? There's no way you can reverse the second. I know what is defending, and which is so funny. God.
Ready to roll out. I never tread lightly.
Right. Oh, right. Oh, right. Oh, right. Right.
Run.
Come on. Right.
I know, man. The guy is fucking me, man.
Right, it's okay. Right, I'm going to...
Oh, the guy is over here, man, best.
It's good, right. It's okay. You got it.
Come on,
Come on, Harry!
My magic flows through the temples. Guardians, do not let
Oh, he summoned boss, best.
Oh no. Oh no. Bread!
I'll just give our best.
I just love how they work as three tanks.
Lights away.
Three tanks! Three tanks! I can't make three tanks. No way. No way. I can't make three. What else you
Ready to drop the hammer.
doing wrong?
your enemy is attacking your core.
So fucking. Okay, there's no way can versus this. There's no actual way can fortune.
Can't just let you down.
I'm way too tired for this shit, best.
They are gonna.
Your core is under
Just let them in, best. I'm very tired already.
my temple's power has been expended.
What? They have two.
And I believe
They are not.
your enemy is attacking your core.
Just let,
Only left with me. What?
Ready to roll out.
just let,
Stop it.
just let them in, best. Just let them in, best. Look at me.
Right. Only left me. How? But you can someone.
MVP.
What the fuck? This guy is actually what the fuck, man. I'm too tired for this shit, man, best.
And one more to go.
Come on, man. Just lose one more.
I just.
Cheers, love. The cavalry's here.
Let's go, best.
Oh. The love tree tank. You didn't. What?
I did it again, best. Bye, mommy, man.
What?
Can you give me the collar, please?
What thing?
The collar.
Hold on. What do you do?
I'm hungry. Again.
Go buy food.
Wait,
Cheers, love. The
really, best?
cavalry's here.
That's life. Why you
I was asleep though.
Why you sleep? I go sleep. Why don't eat?
Ah,
Hashtag.
I'm so tired. I need to sleep. After this, man.
You have to. Want to eat?
But I have mommy, bro.
What?
I got a mommy.
You have money?
No, mommy. The biscuit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I take one.
Faster, man. What?
Hello and welcome to the Wrestle Talk News. I'm Ollie Davis and I'll be replying to as many arguably the worst name for a pay-per-view in the and Seth Rollins had a terrific
Are
main
you
event,
fucking
and Dana
kidding
Brooke
me? It's the same
actually had
thing
some
again.
good-looking offense. I'm Ollie
Holy-
Davis, and this is the 1st of May 2017
Holy
edition
mama,
of
man.
Monday Night Raw.
Lovely
In of a
application.
whoa. Wait a second. What about Brock Lesnar's Universal title? At the end of this, the show opened with Raw's women's staged formation for Alexa Bliss's coronation as their new champion. Bliss then embarked on a Miz-level promo, seamlessly going through her scripted lines and occasionally improvising to the crowd's reactions. When the audience chanted for Bayley, she snapped back, "I know her name." A scuffle ensued, which turned into all the faces versus all the heels, as these things tend to do. Bliss is so good, she set up multiple feuds, making you want to see her get beat up by Sasha Banks, Bayley, Mickie James, and even Nia Jax down the line. Bliss won for the heels after raking Bayley in the eyes. I'm so thankful we had the superstar shake-up. It means we get fresh matchups like Luke Gallows and Enzo Amore. After a fluky win against Samoa Joe at Payback, Seth Rollins came out to answer Michael Cole's most repeated question that night. What next for Seth Rollins? Turns out the answer is one of those segments where people keep interrupting each other one after the other to say, "No, I deserve the next Universal Championship opportunity." Finn Balor laid his rightful claim. He never lost the belt after all. Dean Ambrose came out to say he's the Intercontinental Champion, and The Miz said he should be the Intercontinental Champion. Kurt Angle made a triple threat match for the show's main event to decide the #1 contender for Dean Ambrose's Intercontinental. Wait, no, again, no! You've done it again! We were talking about the Universal Championship. No time for that. We've got to make all the ropes purple. Jack Gallagher, Rich Swann, and Akira Tozawa beat Tony Nese, The Brian Kendrick, and Noam Dar in a throwaway cruiserweight 6-man tag. Heel Maro cut an in-ring promo explaining why they viciously turned on Matt and Jeff
It's the
Hardy
same
the previous
person.
night at Payback, wearing some trendy matching black bomber jackets and kilts. A neat touch to get across they're the bad guys now, and you should boo both of them, not just Sheamus. They accused the Hardys of stealing their spotlight and being nothing more than a nostalgia act. Right on cue, Matt showed he's slowly moving on from Team Extreme, cutting his most broken gimmick promo yet and threatening to delete them with his trademark pending hand gesture. Later on, Angle announced a tag team turmoil match to decide the #1 contenders next week. Apollo Crews beat Heath Slater. Titus O'Neil took a selfie. This was fine. Both Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns were off TV selling their Payback injuries from the previous night, which Kurt Angle rather ridiculously claimed was the most physical match he'd ever seen. Bray Wyatt interrupted Kurt's injury update, saying Angle might be in control of Raw, but Bray's got the whole world in his hands. Wyatt is such a good talker, and he effectively established tension with the Raw GM here. It's a shame we've been conditioned to see him as just talk, where he loses the majority of his feuds. Austin Aries beat TJ Perkins in a cracking match where TJ worked over the left knee, but tapped in the end to the last chancery. Perkins continued to attack Austin after the match, furthering his weirdly sycophantic relationship with Neville. As is the WWE way, after being made to look like an absolute chump in every segment he's appeared in since the Superstar shake-up, The Miz won a championship opportunity from out of nowhere. But it's hard to complain when the match was so good. Easily one of WWE's best television matches of the year so far. In a lovely piece of frantic booking, Samoa Joe attacked Rollins and Wyatt took out Balor, leaving The Miz to steal a victory he didn't deserve. Unfortunately, it does mean WWE are rehashing a SmackDown feud from just a few months ago with Dean Ambrose versus The Miz. But at least the Intercontinental Championship is being prominently featured on Raw. Oh god damn it, it's because I forgot about the Universal Championship again. So that was this week's Raw in about 4 minutes. Here's the usual ratings recap from top to bottom in awe, core, average, core, and ball. I'll reveal my rating very shortly, but first, vote in the poll above my head to give yours. I'll announce the results in tomorrow's Wrestle Talk news. The episode finished very strongly with 2 great matches, but aside from that, it felt like not much else happened. There wasn't anything actively awful, it was just there. So this week's Raw is average. Watch my review of the surprisingly good Payback, and Alexa Bliss has responded to reports of her being the latest victim of private image hacking. Click the videos to the left to find out more and press subscribe. I've been Ollie Davis and that was wrestling.
Okay, let's give up. Yeah.
Support Wrestle Talk! Give us a subscribe. Hello and welcome to the Wrestle Talk News. I'm Ollie Davis and I'll be replying to as many comments on this video as I can. Last night's episode of SmackDown, which you can watch my review of right here on Wrestle Talk's YouTube channel, was notable for several reasons. Becky Lynch aligned with Charlotte and Naomi, Kevin Owens recaptured the United States Championship, and Chris Jericho was written off television with injury so he can tour with Adam Rose's old ring entrance. But the night wasn't done with just the televised broadcast. In SmackDown's dark match for the live crowd only, AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura shared the same ring for the...
What the fuck is going on? He bring me over, Beth. He literally brought me over, like... How you say over, Beth? How you gonna win this? Come.
You have my gratitude. I'd likely be served food without you.
Guys, not good.
I know, right, Beth?
Picking up the pace.
Not good, guys. they are coming. Guys, they are coming. No red.
Slain. I'm on a roll.
Looks like the beacons are reactivating.
An ally fort has fallen.
Attain control of those beacons. We don't want to face angry Zerg.
We know, but team seems like to. Yeah, teammate. Hello, teammate. We're gonna win them. No way. Defend here. For life. You guys go.
Oh!
Help teammate. Don't go.
Maybe not bad. Look.
Something good over there.
Oh!
I'm going back for a bit. Roger.
Let's give up. Two tanks.
Clock's ticking.
Bye. Good luck. I don't. Piccolo.
Emergency! Stores of Zerg are inbound on our base. Exterminate them immediately.
I don't know. Let's follow them. I don't know what they are doing. Let's follow them. I'm ready.
Your enemy has destroyed the fort.
Fuck it, man.
Bye. I follow them. What they are doing? Just like them pushing it. Let's go. What you want? You want me to do it? No. Fuck off. I'm actually very amused at what they are.
Lost. Warning. Core under attack.
Yeah, I don't care about it.
Well, what are you doing in here, man? Okay, man.
Fuck this shit. See you on the show.
We're gonna lose.
Okay,
Oh yeah, man, best.
What's that, man?
We have to attack, man. Oh!
Alert. Your core is under attack.
Oh! Look, defend. Look at the fucking guy, man. Oh, very tired.
We are clear of the Zerg. Huh. Who designed this ramshackle facility?
Just attack. Fuck it.
Picking up the pace.
What they are doing? Look.
Don't cast too.
Enemy defeated. Dash levels complete.
What do you mean by defense? There's no.
Alert. Your core is under attack.
I'm not memeing, but
Allied cube destroyed.
let's go. Let's go. What do you mean by defense? Hey. Defense. No allow defense. Ah! Ah! Ah, bro! What do you mean by defense? I try to make cut.
The beacons are energizing.
What do you mean by closing the door so loud? What? They are so loud, playing mahjong. What do you want?
There! The beacons! Capture them!
Ah, don't catch her, man. It's okay, man. It's okay, man. Don't need to catch her. It's the best.
Select a talent.
Don't have to defend, man. What's defend my best?
I got this.
Oh, coming best. Oh.
I got it right. I got it right. Right. I can't.
Oh, what's this? Oh, that's a taxi. Stay off helping, man.
You mean? I got this.
Enemy hero terminated.
Hey, over, best. Haha.
Me. I got this. I got this. Did I throw? Oh. So someone ran over me? Okay, let's die.
Hey, over, best. Hey, over.
Warning. Core under attack by hostile.
Oh, fall the attack. What happened? Oh.
I knew this was a reckless plan. Legions of Zerg have caught our scent. Go!
Take it.
Been slain. Alert. Your core is under attack.
What happened? What actually happened? Oh, the cars have been attacked. Oh.
Oh, God.
Ah, victory, man.
MVP.
Jack. I did all the job. Yeah, Overwatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the spray.
Yeah, Diva banner. Diva band portrait. Holy shit. Alright, let's end. Oh, let's exit the game.